authoritarians, we can summon the ferocity of Narasimha, or to overcome the cleverness, we can follow Vamana's humble boldness. And in any situation you find yourself, there is a different avatar of Vishnu that you can call on to try to replicate that sage wisdom. Ultimately, Vishnu's avatars teach us that rescue comes in many different forms, and sometimes it is fierce, and sometimes it is humble and quiet, and sometimes it is tender and thoughtful and meditative. But ultimately, it always comes. And that is the heartbeat of Dashavatara, the divine assurance that the universe does not abandon those who are struggling, it doesn't leave the poor behind, and that those who are in need will eventually get the justice that they deserve. And when chaos surges and when evil reaches, hope is still there. And maybe that's the truth that we can all take, even if you're not Hindu, that you can pull out that message of hope and that rescue is always on the way, whatever your faith tradition, right? I mean, we are ultimately part of the story. We are here to be avatars in our own way, to protect the needy and to preserve what is good and to rescue those that need help and to rise up against tyrants and evildoers. And every avatar of Vishnu deals with that. And in the end, the avatars aren't just, divine saviors. They are these sparks of potential that we can channel, that we could potentially be. And they don't live in temples or, it's not just, people in scripture. That these avatars live in action. And anyone who stands up when it matters most is ultimately doing the will of Vishnu. And sometimes rescue comes as a god, and sometimes it comes as us. I mean, in the end, for me, as someone that's not Hindu and, doesn't really know a ton about the Hindu tradition, I think it's just a little helpful reminder that, this too shall pass, that, chaos and darkness might descend, but all things are able to be endured, and ultimately rescue will come for all of us if you can just last long enough. And whether it's, the cosmic ocean that is rising again, or, a tyrant that has come to, destroy the earth, or, chaos in society that ultimately gets reset, Vishnu maybe is a lesson that, the avatars are promised that love will, defeat hate, and that light will outshine darkness, and hope will always return. And regardless of what you believe or what your background is, I think that's a helpful thing to remember. And that is the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Now again, I'm not grown up Hindu myself. This was all really brand new to me when I was going through the research, and I find it really interesting. I mean, there's so many little stories that I think tie into other things that I've seen in pop culture, whether it's like Greek history or Greek mythology, or like Roman mythology, or even in some ways like Catholic mythology, right? Like the idea of like God descending, to Earth. And you gotta wonder, is there a connection between these things? I don't know, but I do find it interesting. And as someone that appreciates, all the face of the world and what they can offer, I look at these stories and I say, oh yeah, these are nice. To me, they're just stories, but obviously to millions of Hindus, this is, the reality of their philosophy and their faith background. So I think there's some things to be gleaned, that, we're all called in some capacity to, stand up against, evil and to protect those that need to be protected. And these are the things that I like to highlight, why I like doing this show, because you get to see that at the core of almost every faith tradition that exists, the tenets are good. Like, I think most people would read these stories of Vishnu and the avatars that Vishnu sort of becomes and be like, oh yeah, these are good stories. These are good values that are, helpful to be passed down. And which is why I think they have been passed down and why the cultures that embrace them have flourished for, millennia. So, I'm curious, what do you guys think? If you grew up Hindu, is there anything that I missed? Please drop a comment. If you did not grow up Hindu or you don't know much about the Hindu faith, what did you think? I'm curious if you found connections to your own faith background or maybe to pop culture, things broadly speaking that you didn't expect. As always, I read all the comments, so just be nice, alright? This is Religion Camp. You can be civil, alright? Leave all the crazy stuff for History Camp, main camp channel. I don't know, Christos, what do you think? Did you learn anything? Was there any deductions or things that sparked interest in your mind?
Yeah, just a lot of crossover from one of our main camp episodes with the end time prophecies with Joe Avery.
That is right, me and my buddy Joe Avery. We did do an episode on basically the eschatology, basically the philosophy of the end times of every major religion. So not only did we talk about Kalki and the Kali Yuga, but we also talked about Islam and end times of Islam with the Dajjal, the Antichrist that basically comes back, and Yajuj and Majuj, and all the the lore in the Quran about what that looks like, but as well as Christianity, like the Book of Revelation, all that stuff. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Maybe we put that in the description below so people can check it out. But anyway, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of Religion Camp. As always, at this beautiful tent, we believe that life is better with belief, and we can see if we can learn something from all the faiths of the world. Anyway, thank you all so much, and peace with you. What's up, people? Quick announcement. If you are a fan of Camp Gagnon or Religion Camp, I have great news, because we're dropping History Camp. That's right. This is the channel where we're going to be exploring the most interesting, fascinating, controversial topics from all time throughout all history. Right? You probably know about Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Nikola Tesla. Interesting figures from history, and you probably learned about it at school, and they were pretty boring, but not here. Now, as you know, I was raised by a conspiracy theorist, so I'm going to be diving deep into all of the interesting, strange, occult, and secretive societal relationships that all of these famous, influential men from our shared past have. So if you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It will be pinned in the description as well as the comments. And if you're on Spotify, this doesn't really apply to you, but these episodes will be dropping as well. Just go ahead and give us a high rating, because it really helps the show.
This message comes from NPR sponsor HP. Break language barriers by translating languages in real time with the HP AI PC. With the right tools, work doesn't have to feel like work. More at hp.com/AIPC.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. European leaders are joining Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House today. They were left out of President Trump's meeting last Friday with Russian President Putin in Alaska. NPR's Lauren Freyer reports.
On the eve of this White House visit, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron chaired a virtual meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing. Afterward, they issued a statement saying they're ready to deploy multinational force Ukraine, what they call a reassurance force, to, quote, help secure Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerate Ukraine's armed forces, but only once hostilities cease. In their statement, Starmer and Macron say they reaffirm their support for Ukraine, praise Zelensky's desire for a just and lasting peace, and commend Trump's commitment to providing security guarantees to Ukraine. Lauren Freyer, NPR News, Glasgow.
President Trump says Hamas should be confronted and destroyed. Writing online today, Trump says that's the only way Israeli hostages will return. Trump says, quote, the sooner this takes place, the better the chances of success will be. More National Guard troops are coming to Washington, D.C. President